Welcome to episode 429 of the Microsoft Cloud IT Pro podcast, recorded live on May 29, 2026. This is a show about Microsoft 365 and Azure from the perspective of IT pros and end users, where we discuss a topic or recent news and how it relates to you. In this episode, Ben and Scott dig into the concept of LLM Wikis, specifically building personal knowledge management vaults using Obsidian, Markdown, and AI tooling like Claude Code, GitHub Copilot CLI, and Copilot Cowork. Scott walks through how he wired up Obsidian Web Clipper and an RSS Dashboard plugin to feed articles into his vault automatically, then had the LLM help build a Python script to automate the ingestion workflow and cut down on token usage. Then he expands into how Copilot Cowork fits into this workflow as a scheduling harness with practical examples of using it to pull email from an inbox daily, convert messages to Markdown, and generate a prioritized to-do list. Let's dive into the world of LLM Wikis.
I have a theory.
Windows?
No. I mean, yes.
I run too much stuff.
Yes, but no. Well, I think we all run too much stuff. I've noticed lately that, and I think I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, the whole, I've got CoTypist on my Mac doing type ahead prediction with a locally downloaded model. I've got Type Whisper running in the background with a model loaded in case I just want to do text dictation. Like I was thinking about it the other day. At any given time, local model running, I probably have at least 4 instances of the same model or a similar model all loaded up because these apps don't have like a common cache interface. Like they don't use like Hugging Face cache or things like that. They'll download like locally into their packages and their directories. So at least for me, I think a lot of the things that I'm running into lately are actually resource contention. Like I haven't materially changed my workloads or my workflows, but I have a bunch more of these apps running in the background that I didn't have before. I was trying to do a little bit of an audit, and it's not driving like crazy memory pressure, crazy CPU pressure, but like when some of these models load and unload, like you've got like, I don't know, like Gemma 4 sitting there ready to go. It's like, oh, hey, I had 4 gigs of RAM that just got evicted for this thing over here. And then it's got to reload rapidly for this. Like, I don't know. That would be my guess, is we're all running like so much like local AI slop that we don't even know it.
So little of it we can control. Like, I don't remember if we talked about this or when this came out, but Google Chrome now downloading a 4 gig LLM model in the background as part of the browser.
The Gemma model in the background. Yep. So that same model is the same model that I'm using in CoTypist, which is similar to what I'm... So like I've got this app called Type Whisper. Anywho, so Type Whisper is one of the dictation apps, but rather than using like Whisper Flow or Super Whisper, everything processed locally on device. You can choose like, hey, I want to use Parakeet. But the cool thing it does is it does live processing, like live transcription, and then it does post-processing as well, which is nice. So you can do that thing where you're just saying, hey, I'd like to make a list. Number 1 is this, number 2 is this, number 3 is this. And normally that would just be a big flat wall of text going across. But if you post-process it and it gets smarter, it actually renders like 1, 2, 3, and 4 into a list. And that's the text that is expressed that you just dictated. But I was thinking about that one the other day. I was like, ooh, this is getting slower and slower. And I went and looked and I turned on like the pre-integration, the run it thing, the post-integration. So that one had to get kicked to the curb. It was nice, but it was slowing things down for sure.
Yeah. All these things. You know what other things? Well, no, I won't go down that rabbit hole. We can talk about other things. But speaking of more things we're running, you and I both started playing with something within the last... I don't know when you started. I started like a week and a half ago playing with more things to run on our computers.
Yes.
And this is not, maybe we should preface this. This is not specifically, I would say, Microsoft or 365, a Microsoft 365 or Azure episode. However, it incorporates into our work with Microsoft 365 and Azure and how we're starting to track some of our resources.
I have a tie-in for you there. I'm actually going to, yeah.
Do you have a tie-in for me?
Yep.
Okay. So if you're listening and you're like, there's not going to be a tie-in, Scott has a tie-in. I don't know when it's going to drop. So you better listen to the whole episode to figure out the tie-in.
Stick around.
Okay.
I've been playing around and been watching all these just videos fly by and articles fly by around the concept of LLM Wikis and leveraging LLMs to manage a wiki resource for you. And specifically, like I've been doing this with Obsidian Vaults. So Obsidian Vaults work very nicely here. They're markdown, plain text. LLMs process plain text pretty darn well. They understand markdown pretty well. It's kind of like a de facto standard for authoring these things, right? All the skills, agents you write, everything you do is in markdown. So an LLM wiki, if you have a compendium of knowledge that you want to put together, and that could be around anything. It could be maybe around a topic that you're researching. So I don't know, let's say you want to, in M365 land, you want to go explore the current licensing constructs and compare this eSKU to this business premium SKU or to this add-on. You could go and take like all those pricing pages and all the documentation around that, and you could put it in just a big dumping ground of markdown, just a raw source. And then you can have an LLM reason across that data and extract information around it. So understand what was the source data that came with it, maybe what are the general concepts around it, entities, all these different sorts of things that are out there. So Andrej Karpathy, who's kind of like one of the original researchers over at OpenAI, I believe he's also the person who coined the term vibe coding. So he's kind of pretty close to...
He's been in this space for a little bit. Was recently hired by Anthropic post getting out there and putting some of these things out. But I'll have a link in the show notes for everybody to a gist that he posted. And this gist is just an LLM wiki. So you go and kind of read through this thing, and it's just llm-wiki.md. And the core idea of this whole thing, like I said, is you kind of have a big dumping ground. You could think about it as maybe like a folder that you called raw, or you called ingest, you called it clippings, something like that. And what you do is you keep putting articles in there, reference materials, but you put it in as markdown. So this whole thing just becomes a big bank of markdown that's sitting out there. And you direct the LLM that anytime a new thing shows up in my raw directory, to reason over it and then extract that information, extract entities, extract core concepts, tell me what the source of it is, and put it all together. And this is the nice thing about something like Obsidian. So Obsidian, a personal knowledge management tool, PKM, but Obsidian does wiki-style links. So you can have all these things start to relate to each other. And then you get the kind of graph-based views that come along with that as well. So it takes almost nothing to wire it up, first of all, to get started. So it's pretty much go out and take this gist. And yes, you need to have access to some kind of LLM interface. Now, that LLM interface could be, hang with me here, could be Claude Code, could be Gemini CLI. Well, actually, Gemini CLI just went away. Anti-gravity, but there's also anti-gravity CLI. It could be GitHub Copilot CLI, Codex, whatever that is. Or if you have access to, I don't know, say Copilot Cowork and the Frontier agent, because you're in the Frontier program, you can also run an LLM wiki inside of Copilot Cowork. Have you tried this? I'm curious to see. And it works?
Oh yeah, it opens up a whole interesting world of possibilities here. Hold on, stick with me.
Now you have me curious. If you're managing file storage today, you've probably felt the pressure. Refresh cycles are harder to plan, costs and complexity are increasing, especially as file workloads scale across regions. That's why Microsoft customers trust Nasuni. As an Azure-certified software, Nasuni provides a global file system designed for enterprise-scale environments, keeping file data secure, governed, and accessible across Azure environments without added infrastructure complexity. It's the foundation to keep your unstructured data stable, even as your infrastructure evolves. To see how much you could save while keeping your initiatives on track, visit nasuni.com/TCO. That's NASUNI.com/TCO.
So let's talk about wiring all this up. So you basically go out and I've done a couple of these now, and been kind of playing around. And you've been playing around with one to build basically an Obsidian vault for us around the podcast. So we can go back and say,
podcast stuff in. It's fascinating.
When did we talk about this? On what date did this happen? How many times did we have this guest on? So, and now you've got all that information in text in one place.
Show me all the episodes where we talked about a specific topic. It's been really interesting. Go show me what topics. We've pulled analytics into it. Go show me what topics tie it into analytics. Yeah, all the things.
Go take this gist and you can literally copy and paste it. I don't know if this is how you started the one that you worked on.
I'm curious how you started, and I'll tell you how I started.
So I took this gist and I copied and pasted it straight into a CLI. I took it and put it right into, actually, you know what I did? Because I wanted to do this like a free way that anybody could get started with. So I did it in Claude Code, but I did it in Claude Code tied to OpenRouter and the free models in OpenRouter. So I wasn't using a paid Anthropic or Claude plan. I wasn't using like pay per token. I did all this stuff for free. You could do it for free with anti-gravity and things like that. Gets a little harder to do free later, like once the vaults get a little bit bigger, but you can totally start out.
Really hard to do free later.
But you can start out for free. So you take this gist and you put it into your LLM interface. In this case, let me say like Claude Code, just paste it straight into the terminal and add a line at the end that says, I want you to turn this into a context file for this vault, or like, I want you to create the second brain for Scott that manages everything he finds on the internet and wants to read about later, right? So you give it a little bit of context. That's it. You just put in that one little sentence at the end, fire it off. It will create a Claude. In the case of Claude, it will create a Claude.md. You did this in GitHub Copilot. It'll create you like a Copilot instructions.md. I recommend doing a Claude.md as a context file, and then you can just pull it from like LLM to LLM, because all the various, or I guess from agentic harness to harness, because you can take a Claude.md and use it in Claude. You can take a Claude.md and use it in anti-gravity CLI. You can take it and use it in GitHub Copilot CLI. So that context file becomes very portable. So you do that, and that's where you start. And then it's going to create your, in my case, a Claude.md. And in my Claude.md, I said, okay, I'm going to go do a little bit of light iteration here on some of the instructions that I want this thing to have, right? And have for its context. So that was, I've got a root folder called clippings. I believe in the original gist, it's called like raw. I don't know. It didn't sit well with me. I was like, I'm going to put Obsidian clippings in here, like Obsidian Web Clipper. So I called mine clippings. Okay. And then I added a couple different wiki directories. So it automatically does one for, it does like wiki/sources, entities, wiki/concepts. I wanted wiki/people because I knew I was going to be putting things in there about like the podcast and you and I. So I wanted it to extract like Ben and Scott or Ben and Scott together kinds of things. And then all you do is go out and start putting some markdown in that, in my case, my clippings directory. So the way I did that is with Obsidian Web Clipper. So Obsidian Web Clipper is available on every platform. It's there on iOS and Android, so you can use it on your mobile. It's there on Edge and Chrome and Safari. So any kind of thing that you end up looking at on the web, all of a sudden becomes a resource that you can take and you can say, hey, I want to reason over this later in my wiki. So maybe you start small. Go grab like 5 articles that you're interested in and put them in there. And then all you do is say, ingest my clippings or ingest my raw stuff, depending on how you set up that directory and how you framed out your ingest flow. And then it'll go and it'll just build this stuff out. I went and iterated over mine a little bit. So I because I was using Obsidian Web Clipper uses a template when it loads data in. So I wanted all my reasoned over data to also follow a similar template. So it had a title, a published date, a created date, tags, reference resources, things like that. So I actually created a template.md file. And then I went back and I modified my Claude context. And I said, okay, hey, when you ingest things, make sure that the outputs use this template. Super easy, right? So, and you just start right there. And you start to get this little bit of like, this is interesting. And then you start wondering what else you can do with it. But it runs away from you very fast because you're ingesting text, and maybe not just a couple lines of text, but let's take that M365 pricing example, right? I want to build something that can go reason over that. You're going and grabbing every pricing page, potentially the images off those pages, and doing like OCR and computer vision over them. So it's pages and hundreds of kilobytes of text that you're putting in, which is heavy on the token side, both on input and output.
Yes.
So this is where something like maybe like OpenRouter and a free solution starts to run away from you a little bit. So I did OpenRouter. I got by with maybe like my first 10 clippings in doing this. And when I ran out of stuff in OpenRouter, I was like, well, I want to see like how far I can push this free thing. So I went over to Anti-Gravity, which was recently released. And that uses Gemini and Gemini Flash under the hood. Let me tell you, Anti-Gravity burns some tokens. I think I burned through all my tokens in Anti-Gravity like after like my first 2 ingests, and it burned them for like 6 days. It's like, you have no more usage for the next 6 days. But what you do there is LLMs, they really like to overthink things, right? And so they'll start to do things like, you'll notice these patterns when, in my case, I was saying, ingest my clippings. I noticed every single time, no matter which harness I was using or which model I was using, all of them were doing similar things. They would say like, oh, well, I need to go figure out how to list your ingest directory. So every single one was saying, thinking. Okay, I'm going to list your ingest directory. So I'm going to go do like an ls*.md kind of thing. You can automate all that stuff. You don't have to have the LLM do it. So the trick is you come back, or you don't have to harness and the model do it. So you come back and you say, hey, I've got this context file now, and we've come up with a workflow. How can I automate this workflow? Can we make parts of this workflow scriptable? Just ask the question. And in my case, like the one that I've been really living in, I called it my brain bank. I said, hey, this is Scott's second brain. So it created me a Python script called brain.py. And off brain.py, it created a number of sub-arguments. So it took my ingest flow, and after like 3 ingests, and it had all the context, and it kind of knew what it was doing repeatedly, it built me a brain.py /ingest or like -ingest command. And then I said, oh, hey, you're doing this. Why don't you build me like a linting command to make sure that you're always matching up to my template? Because I see you spinning a lot of tokens trying to go back and read that template.md and then get it back over here. So it made me brain.py lint, made me brain.py organize, made me brain.py clean up any old clippings, maybe like organize them into subfolders, things like that, link them back to sources. So over time, I've been on this journey of saying, hey, all the stuff that you're doing that I see you're repeating yourself doing, but it's you as like the LLM thinking about it, just go slam that in my script. Just keep putting it in there, putting it in there, putting it in there. So then you're not burning all the tokens. Like it doesn't have to, and then you tell it, go update my context file. So if I look at how I started from, let's say like my ingest flow in my Claude.md, originally that was something like it said, hey, your vault structure for clippings, things like that. So my operations for ingest was like, step 1, go list this directory. Now, step 1 is turned into research. Run Python 3 scripts, brain.py, scan ingest, and then take that output and then go check this. Go run brain.py again, get this list output, compare those two things. So that way it doesn't have to, start immediately every single time enumerating a whole directory and running over it and being very heavy. So you can start to very quickly like drive it down into like scriptability and less. And that was a part that I kind of enjoyed, right? Like IT pro hat, like, hey, let's go get this going. I think you were doing some PowerShell scripts and things on your side, on the Windows side. But you just kind of keep going down that path. And then because you're doing this all in an Obsidian markdown style, now you go and open it up in Obsidian. Just go open your project directory and what you're doing in there. And you'll get access to all the features of Obsidian. So that includes tagging, it includes searching, it includes the PKM with the knowledge graph. Obsidian's like a canonical markdown editor. It's really darn good at it. You and I had been chatting about one of the ways we do research for the podcast is by following a bunch of RSS feeds. What's the easiest way to ingest the RSS feed? Well, I've been going through like Feedly or Reader and opening it in a website and then hitting the Obsidian Web Clipper and doing things like that. There's this really cool plugin for Obsidian called RSS Dashboard, where you can just follow an RSS feed. And as you follow, and now because it's an Obsidian vault and it's just markdown, and I can have it in my OneDrive, or you can have it in your Google Drive or whatever, it's actually kind of like Feedly, and that suddenly it's a cloud sync service, right? It's following you around in your configuration. But RSS Dashboard is really cool because every feed article that comes through, you can just click a red or an unread button to flag it or get rid of it. But if you click save on it, it has a really nifty templating system. So I was able to take my template.md, which again was just based on an Obsidian Web Clipper kind of default template. But I was able to make that my template for RSS Dashboard and have it every time I saved an article from RSS, it saves it as markdown over in my clippings directory automatically, right? Like yes, I have to click save on the article, but it gives me this kind of like one-stop shop ingest flow to get those things kind of through. So really interesting way to go and kind of reason over personal data, really any kind of project that you're doing. I would recommend constraining this stuff. Think about it maybe like if you're coming from Claude land, maybe think about it as like project based, or if you're coming from like the Cowork side of the house, maybe you use like notebooks in Cowork, things like that. Like, let me group these documents together so that I can go do some research on them kind of thing. I do find that like, I think they do a lot better when it's kind of same knowledge area to reason over rather than having a whole bunch of different things there. Because again, eventually you get back to like really heavy context windows and things like that happen along the way. But so let's talk about now, hey, great, you did this in an RSS feed. Or, all right, you told me that like I could take an article from the web and I can clip it in here. Sure, whatever. Copilot Cowork. And Copilot Cowork, the Frontier agent. So the Frontier agent that's out there has custom skills. So you can take the very same kind of flow around having a context, in this case, like a Claude.md. You could actually take everything that's in your Claude.md and put it in a skill.md inside Cowork. And you go, oh, well, that's not helpful. Like all you're doing is telling me that I'm just using Cowork to process my clippings and things like that. I actually recommend going a step further. Create yourself skills that do things like take the emails in my inbox and save them into my ingest directory as markdown. And it'll take all your emails for that day. Like somebody on my team did this and it's super cool. He has it so Cowork looks at his inbox every day. It takes all the items in his inbox and it turns them into markdown. And then once they've been turned into markdown, they just get marked as read and archived because now they're sitting over in markdown, right? Just in his OneDrive. And then he runs an LLM Wikis style kind of thing on top of it to extract what are his priorities for the day. Maybe he got an email from me, or he got an email from a coworker, or he's got specific projects that he flagged, things like that. And then he has this set of skills that iterate over it. And I've been playing with this too. It actually works really darn well. You can take those things, reason over them, create your own personal knowledge management vault just inside of your OneDrive for Business. Obsidian's free. You're effectively getting cloud sync because you got markdown. So if you're in like, oh, hey, I need to get to this on my work phone or things like that, run Obsidian on your work phone. Just point it at your OneDrive directory. It's okay. It'll all work. And then you get to start thinking about like richer functionality within Obsidian. So this was the thing that unlocked it for me in the Copilot Cowork scenario, was not just like reason over what happened today and maybe give me a table, like tell me like the top 3 people who emailed me or things like that. But Obsidian has plugins and wiki style markdown for things like task lists. So you can actually have it like if you got 50 emails last night and you walk in the morning, and you can have it take those 50 emails, reason over them, do whatever it needs to do, and create like your to-do list for the day. And then you actually get like a clickable to-do list, not in Planner or anything like that. Like you can just put it in Obsidian and have it there and ready to go. And it's very, very portable. And because Copilot Cowork has access to like your Teams messages and your inbox and all these things, you can have it like mark your email as read and archive it. You can have it organize your email for it as it's doing this extraction and pushing things out. You might have it like, in my case, I get a lot of like junk mail and newsletters. So no matter how hard I try and filter those things out, some always make it into my inbox or my inbox other or things like that. So I can have that flow come back and clean that up as well, right? Like say, hey, it notices there's a newsletter there. I don't have to worry about creating a custom rule for it anymore. I've just got Cowork dumping that stuff off to a newsletter directory. And then part of my ingest flow, because it's still ingesting those things into my wiki, is telling me what newsletters I got that day, just in case there was something there that I wanted to read or things like that. So you can absolutely take this concept and pull it over to the world of things like Copilot Cowork and all of that. Or if you wanted to, I've seen a couple folks do this with just something like GitHub Copilot and WorkIQ, or Copilot CLI, Claude with the WorkIQ MCP and things like that as well. The problem with the WorkIQ MCP is I've had way better luck with like Copilot Cowork saying, actually like move this message from here to here. WorkIQ is like glorified graph reader. So you end up in some weird throttling scenarios and other things that Copilot Cowork seems to generally skirt around.
You're out of time. Copilot needs to be deployed ASAP. But is your tenant really ready for it? Years of data, permissions, and users lurk in its shadows, ready to be exposed by AI. ShareGate Protect sees it all, so you can find the exposure risks, fix them fast, and deploy AI with confidence. Microsoft 365 Governance. We got this. Learn more at sharegate.com/governance. Have you tried it the other way, where once you have your Obsidian Vault and you're syncing it down with OneDrive, you save articles into your raw folder in OneDrive and have Copilot Cowork actually ingest all the stuff you're saving locally?
Yeah.
And then just use... So you use Copilot Cowork for everything.
Yes, use Copilot Cowork as the harness.
As the LLM, the harness, yep.
Where I said, hey, when we started in the beginning, I said, hey, I was doing this in Claude with OpenRouter. Replace Claude and OpenRouter with Copilot Cowork, the frontier agent.
And then you just switch from doing everything in the CLI to going into Cowork and starting conversations in Cowork in the browser for all the ingesting and processing that raw data.
Yes, to starting. But once you're like, let's do like the crawl, walk, run thing. So I think crawl is us walking in there and typing all the time and kicking these things off. Once you have a refined workflow, Copilot Cowork lets you schedule this stuff. And if you're structuring it in a way where you're being principled, like in my case with my local vault here that I was using for like ingesting RSS feed articles and things like that. So in that one, I'm sitting in a world of that workflow. That's really like an on-demand thing, right? Like I don't always have clippings in there. I don't need it to be looking once an hour or anything like that. Emails are coming in all day. So I can have that skill run every hour and do that ingest hourly. So I don't even have to live in Outlook. I can just go live in Obsidian. It's kind of nice. The other thing too is I talked about the concept of like taking some of the heavier operations and going and putting those in scripts and things like that. You can still do that in Cowork because Cowork can execute local flows. Or the other approach that you could take would be to really think about maybe rather than like scripts and functions to just skills and functions. So having kind of the building blocks sitting inside of composable skills that then you can stack per scheduled task or whatever you want to do on the Cowork side.
Interesting. There was another question I was going to ask about this, and I can't remember what it was. Ingesting, scheduling. Oh, have you compared? So this has always been a debate too, right? Is how Copilot does in terms of responses versus something like Claude or any of those. Have you compared the LLM that gets built or the wiki that gets built by Cowork versus a wiki that gets built by Claude? Just to see side by side how I know Cowork is different because a lot of it, I don't know that there's as many system prompts injected into Cowork. given that things like DLP don't even work in it versus the normal Copilot?
I feel like the system prompts are still there. You do have, depending on your tenant configuration, you do have model selection, or at least I would call it model selection light. Like in my case, I can choose a couple variants of GPT and a couple Anthropic models. You do get much richer model selection when you're over on a CLI or like a GitHub Copilot chat kind of experience. But the nice thing is, you're talking one vault that just lives out, or a series of vaults. It's all just text, right? That lives out here in a sidecard. So you're not restricted to just Copilot Cowork or just GitHub Copilot CLI.
You could augment
it. You can augment this and kind of go in. So like for me, I tend to live in the terminal. So I'm not going in like during the day. I don't actually like worry about going into Cowork and ever typing a question into Cowork. Cowork's a harness for me to go and run skills, do the extraction, kind of compound value and compound knowledge over the course of a day, a week, a month, things like that. But when I'm going in and I'm going across and I'm saying, hey, look at this stuff, I'm typically doing that through the CLI or like just like GitHub Copilot chat, things like that. Now, the other interesting thing that I found here is it starts to make the data that you extract a little bit more deterministic. So it's a weird black box when you go into Copilot or you go into Copilot Cowork and you say, take a look at all my emails from today and stack rank my top 3 priorities, right? You never know. Is it actually going to search all my emails for the day? What does it consider an email for a day? Is it only looking at my inbox? Is it looking at my inbox plus my inbox other? In my case, I run inbox other, and I do the Scott Hanselman inbox CC thing. So I really got 3 inboxes, right? So I never know like what it's looking at and what it's doing. But by extracting the data and pulling it out and sidecarring it, when I say go look at today is a very real thing. It's a discrete set of data that sits out there and is available. And I found that accuracy has kind of improved there. I have like far more confidence that it can do what it needs to do.
Have you run into anything like using Cowork? To your point earlier about it can be expensive. Sorry, I think I have a meeting up. This episode is brought to you by Trusted Tech. If you're managing Microsoft 365, you already know licensing isn't simple. E3 versus E5, the brand new E7 licenses, Copilot security bundles, and with price changes coming in July 2026, the stakes are getting higher. Trusted Tech helps IT leaders make sense of their Microsoft 365 environment with a free licensing consultation. Their engineers analyze what you're licensed for and what you're actually using, and where you can optimize, whether that means consolidating security tools, preparing for Copilot, or eliminating wasted spend. Plus, they offer proactive and reactive support, which has been awarded yet another solution partner designation from Microsoft for support services. If you want a clear, data-backed plan that has helped over 7,500 subscribing customers save up to 20% on Microsoft 365, before your next renewal, visit trustedtech.team/MSCloudPro M365 and schedule your free consultation today. Okay, I have a meeting at 4. Where you run into some of that quotas and stuff. Like I did mine. I did the podcast. It was 428 episodes. I had all the transcripts. So it was some big text documents, like 30 minutes of talking turns into a lot of text. And I was using Claude and I was doing the Claude Max 5X. So this is the $100 a month plan on Claude. And you get like a 5-hour quota. When I started ingesting podcast episodes, and even I experienced this, I tried to put a bunch of stuff in Python, do as much as I could still burn through my 5 hours of quota in like 12 minutes. It was crazy how quick I burned through tokens. How much did you test Cowork to see if during the ingest, or have you noticed, do you start getting throttled or limited where It's like, okay, go use something else, to your point, for that initial, if you're going to ingest a bunch of stuff, or do you have to start being careful about how often or how much you're ingesting yet? I can imagine you might start getting limits eventually.
Yes, you do have to be careful. So I think the interesting thing here, and the call out that I keep coming back to is, and you're nailing it, is the context windows and the token usage, both on input and output, does get very heavy. So I think this is someplace where I would be inclined to think that folks in our community would be able to wrangle this pretty well, given kind of their backgrounds as developers, IT pros, more experienced end users. You have to think a little bit like that script writer or that programmer. So your job isn't just to have a big context window that you're firing off every single time. It's kind of like ruthless optimization. Get this down to here, get this down to here, get this down to here. So what I realized was when I went and did this on my own, just kind of same thing over in like Claude with Open Router, blah, blah. And I too had to switch over to my paid Claude plan. Don't get me wrong. Like it didn't get me all the way there.
It's expensive.
I think one of the reasons it didn't get me all the way there, because I didn't think about like a programmer from the start. And I just kind of approached it as like the spirit of what Mr. Karpathy had put out there of, hey, here's an LLM wiki. And you give it a simple set of instructions, which I recognize a lot of these folks who are putting these things out there. They do live in a world of unlimited tokens, right? They work at Anthropic and they work at OpenAI and things like that. And not all of us have that luxury. So you do have to kind of think about that and start to refine things. I have noticed, I will say, so I mentioned I've built a couple of these now. So the first one, I really went down that refine path. Now I have this really solid templated thing that already has the scripts from day zero. So when it starts, it's already starting in a more optimized state rather than having to start from scratch every single time. So you kind of carry that knowledge forward. And that helped me a whole bunch when I was thinking about the Copilot Cowork side of it. And then it really started to click for me when I saw one of my coworkers who was in the mixed modality of Copilot Cowork for things like email extraction, but then they were still on the CLI and doing like native Obsidian Web Clipper things and all that stuff, right? Like they were kind of using multiple tools all to have the data coalesced into a single source. And effectively, like, I mean, Obsidian's markdown, you can make it look pretty, all those things. It has checkboxes and tables and you can put images in. Like, is it as rich text as something like OneNote is? Absolutely not. But when you start to get this flexibility of having like multiple ingest points, multiple output points, and kind of the capabilities that come with the plugins in Obsidian, all for free, it kind of just works, right? It's a very cool system. And once you start to go down this path, like for me, I'm one of those people, like I hate to admit it, but I can live in email, right? It's pretty easy to get 50 emails overnight and then you just get stuck in it. You're like, I don't really live in email as much anymore. Email has just turned into, I've got this other thing over here that's taking a look at it. I had to refine it. I had to take some time. I put time into automating that process and automating myself out of that job of living in email. But it helps on the other side. And I think like the thing that really like kicked my butt was this teammate of mine who he lives in the chaos that I live in and the rest of our team lives in. And he has this super awesome, I hesitate to call it a demo because he showed his real workflow for how he manages all this stuff. He put it all in a Git repo for us so we could just pick up the skills and run with them. And he's one of the first people that I'd seen who successfully like navigated inbox zero at Microsoft without feeling like he was missing out on something or feeling like you're not just doing like the Control A delete or Control A archive and I'll hope they email me again tomorrow kind of thing. It was also very interesting to me to see the way that this individual managed tasks in Obsidian, like how they weren't trying like a forcing function of like, I've seen a lot of people use like Copilot Cowork and integrate it with Planner and things like that. And they put together their Kanban boards and I think like the process runs away from you. It gets a little too fancy at some point. I think we're much better served when stuff becomes nice, simple. Like, here's a to-do list. I've got a checkbox. I check that thing off and it gets a strike through it. And you get to feel good about that. Like there's a little rush of endorphins, right? When you check that checkbox and have that sense of accomplishment that's out there. And because this stuff is all text, you can do things because, again, LLM Wiki style Obsidian, you don't even have to check the checkbox. I would imagine, I haven't done this, but I think this would be totally doable. Like I could go into GitHub Copilot CLI and I could say, my task for today to email Jack is done. Can you just check that off for me? And it would go check it off for me, right? I don't have to worry about actually even opening a vault or looking at anything and running that way. The elephant in the room, which I don't think anybody could address at this point, and I mean, it is there, is you're like, this stuff's all plain text, right? You are extracting it out and kind of putting it down to your OneDrive and things like that. So stuff like IRM and MIP really don't apply to markdown files. So certainly like don't break like organizational constraints or things like that. Pay attention to sensitivity labels and all that stuff.
Those types of things. Well, Cowork doesn't pay attention to sensitivity labels, so why should I? No.
It does. It can't read any MIP file. It's kind of useless. So.
Yeah, if you're actually encrypting it. Yeah. No, I'm going to have to play with this too because I'm doing this with meeting notes. And I created a wiki for meeting notes. So like meeting notes tied to people. So I have like people and topic and all of that in meeting notes. It would be really interesting to take this into Cowork and actually like now I can correlate meeting notes with emails, with all of that.
How about just meeting notes, but meeting notes with transcripts? So go create yourself a skill, load it into Cowork, have it extract your meetings transcripts from the prior day, ingest them in, and then go run this over them, right? Like that's just a super...
Yeah, so I'm already doing that part of it. Now I just have to tie in the emails. So it is. It is definitely interesting to start tying all this together. Again, those are the two I've done is emails. I did the podcast. I've started to do just references, but I'm going to go play with blog posts and figure out how to incorporate some of that other stuff in with Cowork. But I just got to chat that my other meeting started.
World of possibilities here.
Absolutely.
So I'll put a bunch of links in the show notes to kind of the original gists and things that came out here.
Yeah, there's some good YouTube videos out there we can post in the show notes too, walking through how different people have done this and showing how some of it's set up too.
I haven't seen a lot of people who have done Copilot Cowork.
I see a lot of Claude.
There's a lot of good reference implementations. Yeah, Claude's out there, super easy to like Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, Kagi, whatever your search engine choice is. I will put out some examples for those who are in the Microsoft ecosystem. So there's a pretty good one out here that I'll put in. It's called the GitHub Copilot Wiki, an AI-powered second brain template. So it's kind of like a forkable template that you can start with. So it already has the wiki structure. It has a template.md. It has a lot of these constructs, right, that I talked about here. And it can just kind of like bootstrap you if you didn't want to start for yourself there.
For sure. I have one YouTube video that walks through how to start and he links a template too. So we'll drop those in the show notes.
Cool.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
Enjoy your weekend. And I'm going to go jump on my next meeting.
Perfect. Me too. Life goes on. All right. Thanks, Ben.
All right. We'll talk to you next time. Yep. Bye-bye, Scott.
If you enjoyed the podcast, go leave us a 5-star rating in iTunes. It helps to get the word out so more IT pros can learn about Office 365 and Azure. If you have any questions you want us to address on the show or feedback about the show, feel free to reach out via our website, Twitter, or Facebook. Thanks again for listening and have a great day.